Welcome to another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And today is going to be a lot of fun. A really good friend of mine has agreed to come be on this podcast and do it live. And he is now a sergeant at APD. So these are the people that serve and protect us. And we want to know a little bit more about who they are, the people that are willing to put their lives on the line for complete strangers all the time. So welcome, Chandler Huston. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for letting me be here. I'm actually just made lieutenant.
Lieutenant?
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
So in my rank now, below me are basically, I supervise sergeants and officers. So what it means for me, I'm in the field, and so I'm in the Southwest, and I supervise the graveyard shift for the Southwest Area Command.
The graveyard shift for the Southwest area, which encompasses what?
Southwest Area Command is everything south of I-40 and west of the Rio Grande, all the city limits inside the parameters there.
That's a lot.
It's a decent chunk. It's not one of the larger area commands, but it's a decent amount.
So how many officers are in your command? Is that the way to say it? Under your command?
Watch is how we
in your
call
watch.
it.
How many officers are in your watch?
So like the ones that I supervise, there are 4 sergeants, and then each sergeant has 4 officers. So 16 officers, 4 sergeants.
Okay, that's a lot of responsibility.
It is, but my sergeants do an excellent job, so it relieves me of a lot.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So how does this? Let's back up just a little bit.
Sure.
Are you a native New Mexican?
Yes.
Okay, so born and raised here. Mm-hmm. Did you always know you wanted to be a police officer?
No. I always had an interest in it. Growing up, my uncle was a Santa Fe County Sheriff Reservist, and so he had handcuffs. And so when I'd go to visit him, I'd always play with his handcuffs, and he'd wrestle with us and arrest us. And so it was just fun to do that with him. And then I always had a sense of just wanting fairness and justice. It was just kind of built into me that way. So I always was interested in it. But I had a friend who, my college roommate, he went off to be a state police officer. And after he did that, he invited me out to do like ride-alongs. So I'd go and ride with him during a shift. And I always found it very exciting and interesting. But at that time, police officers were paid so little. I made more working construction, and our family was in construction, so it was fun working with my dad, and so I just felt God calling me to go that route instead. So I did construction in the first 10 years of my adult life before I made the jump.
Wow. Okay, that's fascinating. Is it common, or do most people get in right away when they're the youngest they can possibly be?
You know, I'd say there's the group that knows they want to be law enforcement, and those are the ones that get in as soon as they possibly can. And they have a passion for it. They have that calling early on in life, and they're just locked on and focused. And then there's us that come in, 10, 15 years later, and it's usually due to in 2008 is when I came over. That was when the construction industry, as you know, didn't do so hot. So there's actually a decent chunk of us that were former contractors that came over in 2008. And so just kind of depends on different people's lives, what happens and the turns they take. They'll come over later in life and switch over.
Gosh, that is fascinating. So. 2008 obviously impacted me greatly because I'm in real estate. It just never would occur to me that shift would take people out of whatever industry they were in and put them in something like law enforcement. You have to tell me more. So it was you were all thinking about it, right? You thought about it all your life, and it was kind of a fun thing, and it was exciting for you. And now 2008 happens, and you're hungry. You got to put some food on the table. So how did it happen?
So I think it's really cool because so my dad passed away due to with leukemia, and so my mom ended up remarrying in January of 2008. Okay. And then I got married in May of 2008, and the business had been kind of, we'd done a lot of feast or famine over the years. So we had multiple times considered and prayed about, should we close it down? Should we move on to something else? And we always felt peace to keep going with it. And then right in June of 2008, we just felt total peace to shut down, sell off what we could. And we were able to sell everything we wanted to sell at that time. And then that's when it was all popping, right? And I couldn't find a job in construction after we shut down and made the decision to save my life. And I'm a newly married guy. Now, fortunately, my wife was a nurse, so she had an income, but she obviously didn't sign up to marry me and support me when I had a job. So I was like, I need to find a job. And she had a friend, and he was testing with APD. And he's like, hey, I'm going to test with APD. You want to come? And I was like, well, I need a job, and I'm interested in law enforcement, so sure, I'll go. And then I passed that test and just started going through the process.
Wow. Okay. So that had to come into the conversation that you are married, and you are married to one of the most beautiful humans I've ever known in my life in every way. You hit the jackpot.
I did. Absolutely.
How did she feel, and how does she feel about what you're doing for a living?
She's totally supportive. She's like all in. I think for us, what was neat is we made the decision together. So it wasn't like she married a cop. She didn't marry a cop, and then we got to go through that process together of getting hired on and wrestling with, like, is this the career God wants me to be in, and am I suited for this? And is it suitable for our family?
Whew. Wow, that is amazing. It is amazing. Your family is incredible. And I don't say that lightly. I really don't. So what I'm hoping for is that whoever's watching this gets to see the human that I know that how do you, this is a really deep question I'm going right into. How do you go from the sweet, loving, wonderful daddy and husband and man that you are to the warrior that you have to be to protect us?
I think the easiest way to explain it is it's like God flips a switch. And it's not, it's funny, you talked about, like, the kind guy I am. And my grandma actually said, you're too nice to be a cop. And she prayed against me to fail the police academy.
Go, Grandma.
Yeah. My wife and my mom were the two that prayed for me to make it, and she prayed against me. But, I think it's great you want to have a good relationship with the community, and it's very easy to treat people with respect, especially when they're treating you with respect. It just comes in more naturally. As far as the warrior mentality, I think it's more of, once they pose a threat, and based on experience and our training, they kind of we're able to start to figure out what is a threat, what looks like a threat of violence. Then at that point, you have to flip the switch, and you have to become more aggressive to protect others, to protect yourself. But at the same time, it's not like you're turning off your brain. So it's not like just because you're trying to think of how to put it. Just because you may have to grab someone and wrestle with them to get them in handcuffs, your goal is strictly to get them in handcuffs. Like, your goal isn't set out to hurt them out of hatred, out of anger. That's not what you're thinking. The whole time you're thinking is, how do I get this person in handcuffs to effect an arrest? Versus, the people that are out brutalizing other people, they're run by hatred, and their motives, they're done by emotions. And ours are strictly out of duty to protect and serve and uphold our oath, which is to enforce the laws of the land.
Right. Oh my gosh, it is such it's so hard for me to understand. And part of, I think part of my empathy with law enforcement is that I managed convenience stores for years.
Okay.
And so I was friends with cops like constantly. They would hang out in there, and I was so grateful, like so grateful. I was like, I'm safe now, and my buddy's over there having a cup of coffee. Do you have a problem? But so I can't comprehend the disrespect that you face. It doesn't compute at all. How do you handle that?
I think the biggest thing that they teach us, and then also you just come to realize, is it's not, they don't know me. They don't know me at all. They strictly see the uniform. And whether they may have had a bad experience with a police officer, and that bad experience may not be some police brutality, that may just be an officer pulled them over on a traffic stop and they felt like they were disrespected, right? And therefore that left a bad taste in their mouth. And so then they just see the uniform and they just think, oh, all cops are jerks. Or they're ignorant in regards to, they don't have a lot of police contact at all, maybe, but they have a friend that told them a bad account or a story, or they watch the news about something. They just blanket every officer. And so therefore really the disrespect is towards the uniform. And I don't take it as it's personally to me. And that does come with being on the job for 16 years now. As a rookie cop, I had to figure that part out.
Whew, yeah.
But once I figured that out, then it's much different. You're not taking things personally because you recognize it's the uniform they don't like, and it could be for a number of different reasons.
Gotcha. So on the flip side, how often has the public just given you tons of love?
It's funny when the climate towards law enforcement is negative in culture, as we see, in the over time, then the folks, this kind of the silent majority that that support law enforcement, they'll speak up. And they don't speak up on the news. They're not doing it on media, but they'll literally roll down their window next to you at a stoplight and say, hey, don't believe everything you're hearing on the media. We support you. Thank you so much. Or they'll come up to you in a restaurant. It's one-on-one personal encounters, and those go up when law enforcement's getting beat up on the media, in media. So it's actually, that's a great way that people support us, and I feel that support, because one thing, and I don't just tell officers this, I tell most people, I'm like, if you pay attention to news, most news is going to be negative. And even if it's a positive story, it'll probably have a negative title, and then, they may report a positive story on the other side, but most of it's negative. So if that's all you watch and all you listen to, you look around the world and you go, wow, is anyone doing anything good? And you get depressed. So I tell them, don't watch the news. I mean, it's great to be informed to some level, but especially when it's starting to rob your joy of life, you may need to shut it off and take a break from media, from news. And so when that time is, during those flows of when culture is kind of feels like anti-police, that we can't get anything right, then if you turn that off, and then all these people are coming up to you going, hey, we really support you, thank you so much, then all of a sudden you feel like there's a lot more support, because you're not listening to all the negative stuff, and you have the people coming up and telling you they appreciate you and they respect you and they like what you do. Awesome.
Do they buy your lunch sometimes?
Sometimes they do. Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes and the folks that offer, and we're like, no, thank you. And there's some folks that won't take no for an answer. Some folks will pick up the tab unbeknownst to us, and then the waiter just comes up and says, someone picked up your bill.
How cool is that?
It's a blessing. It's a treat in regards to think that, wow, someone actually appreciates what we do enough to not know us. Again, they don't know us at all. They're just trying to show their support to law enforcement. And I happen to be the lucky one sitting here today.
Right.
So.
Right. And do you take that back to the other officers? I mean, not the food.
Right.
But do you go back and say, hey, this is really cool. There were 6 of us and somebody picked up the tab.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Is it contagious? Does it help? I mean, because what can we as the public do? I can't imagine why you keep getting up and getting dressed and going to work all the time. Is the way that I perceive the way you're treated as a police officer. That's my perception. And
right.
And if that's wrong, and I'm hearing that you're getting a lot more of this good stuff privately, yes, right? How cool.
So I think for all of us that stay in law enforcement, again, it's us. We all felt a stir towards law enforcement, whether it be early on in your life, whether it be later in life. There was something that appealed to you about law enforcement. And we joke and we say everyone felt called to law enforcement, and it's true though. Like, it is a calling, because who else is running towards the gunshots? Who else wishes they could have taken the bullet for this a person? Like, we hear of the tragedies with kids getting killed, and sorry, there's not one of us that want to give our lives for those kids.
Thank you. That's what I want people to know. I want people to see that. I want them to understand that, you are there and you do love. I mean, you love and you don't know that kid.
Right.
That's what's so amazing. I don't know how that gets trained into a person. It's not trained in, is it? It's the calling.
It's the calling. Yeah. Because there's, what other jobs require you to go and see those horrific things, but you're there to try and stop those things, is what you're there for at all costs.
Okay. So you're there and you're stopping these things. My understanding is, just from all my past of watching television, because I don't watch TV anymore at all, especially not the news. Thank you very much. Domestic violence is the most dangerous call that you can get. Is that true?
Second most dangerous. First, the first most dangerous thing for us is traffic stops.
Seriously, I'll be there.
And that's because when we pull over a vehicle, we're pulling over for a moving violation, which is typically a petty misdemeanor, a nonviolent crime. But we don't know who's in the driver's seat. We don't know who's in that car. We don't know if they have weapons. They know that we're police. They know we're coming to talk to them, and we have no clue who they are. So they have the element of surprise as far as what their motives are, what they're trying to hide, and all of that. So traffic stops are the most dangerous for law enforcement, and then the second most dangerous is domestic violence calls.
Okay, so let's go back to traffic stops. You pull me over. I actually know the answer to this because I have so many police friends, but the public doesn't. Mm-hmm. What does my demeanor need to be like for you to feel the most safe as you're walking up on my car?
So if your window's already down as I make the approach, that's great, because then I can immediately communicate to you quickly. If you have tinted windows, in like your backs are tinted and I can't see into your car, if you have those down so I can see into your car as I make my approach, then I can see there's not someone hiding, pointing a gun at me or anything, because it's a big, we don't know what's in there. And because it's the most dangerous thing that law enforcement encounters, we're on high alert as we make our initial approach, especially to kind of assess the situation. So if the windows are down and your hands are in sight, if you're rummaging through stuff, the question is always like, what are you rummaging for? Is it a weapon that could hurt me, right? And so that's why officers will commonly say, just keep your hands on the steering wheel, keep your hands where I can see them. And that's just because we don't want you to reach for a weapon. Even if you're just saying, hey, I just want to let you know I have a gun in the car. I want to, I would like you to tell me that, but I don't want you to reach to show it to me. So
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, 101. All right, anything else? You're walking up to the car. I should keep my hands where they are. I should not be rummaging, even if I'm looking for my license and insurance and all that good stuff. Wait until you get there if I haven't found it by the time you approach.
Yeah, and then, we'll introduce ourselves. We'll tell you why we pulled you over, so that way you'll know, because sometimes you're like, I have no idea why you pulled me over, and I'd like to know why I'm being stopped. So we'll tell you why we're stopping you, and then we'll kind of just have a conversation with you. It's funny when I pull over like a teenager driver that's never been pulled over before. Sometimes their hands they're shaking because they're just so scared. They don't have a clue how the process works. And so then we'll just ask you some simple questions like, do you have your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance? The 3 things you need to have to legally be driving you and your vehicle on the road. And then if you need to reach in the glove box for it, I always appreciate it when people are like, it's in the glove box, I'll get it. And then I know exactly what you're doing. You're telling me what you're doing before you do it. And it makes me more comfortable. And so I'm not high alert and stuff. And so going back to the teenage drivers, I'll just walk them through this. I'll say, hey, this isn't traffic stop's not a big deal. I'll explain to you, here's the steps, and we'll go through the process.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So, now you go to the domestic violence, where you go in and you're in a situation, you're in someone's home. Whew. I've never really thought through this until I'm sitting here with you. You're in their home. This is their turf, their environment, and you don't know what's where and who's where, and tempers are high. So what is your first objective in that scenario?
First objective is just basically to make it safe. So, depending on the information we have going to the call, if it's a verbal argument, we're not going to come in guns a-blazing type, verbal argument. But if it was so-and-so was threatening me with a weapon, now we're going to change how we handle things. So the first thing is we just need to make sure everybody is okay and that no one's armed. And so we'll separate the parties. If weapons are mentioned, or we have belief that weapons are involved, then we may conduct a pat down just to confirm you don't have weapons on you. So then we can have a conversation about, hey, so what's going on today? And then we know no one's going to introduce a weapon to the scene. But homes have kitchens with kitchen knives. So even if people don't own guns, they have knives. People have the right to own guns. So there could be guns. It's their home, you said, and emotions are high. And then we're coming into their home. So anybody who's, if your emotions are high and someone's coming into your home uninvited, then you're going to even be that much more defensive. And so it's kind of it could be a perfect storm, right?
Yeah.
As far as just setting someone off.
Yeah. So what has been one of your best, are you trained psychologically?
So what we receive in training wise is we receive crisis intervention techniques, which basically help us with de-escalating people. So we apply the 7 active listening skills, where we're trying to listen to people and help them relax and calm down, which you never want to tell someone to calm down when they're upset, right? Most people know that. You get the opposite reaction. So we have other techniques that we are trained in. It's a 40-hour course that we're taught in how to help people to go ahead and calm down just through conversation.
So do you break their pattern? Do something that's surprising so that they have to not keep going down the road they're going down?
So it really just depends. But what a lot of people want to do is they want to be heard, and they want to know that you actually hear them, right? It's that whole validating what they're saying. So you don't have to agree with what they're saying, but they want to know that you're actually hearing what they're being said, that someone's actually listening. And so that does take time. And so it depends on the situation, on if you're going to break the path they're on. If obviously they're getting spun up, you're gonna try something new. If you basically when you're talking to someone who's really upset, there's hooks and triggers, they call them. So a trigger is going to cause the person to go up in their emotions, and if you accidentally hit one of those, you're like, oh no. So you try and introduce a hook, which is an interest they have. Get them talking about something else that they like to talk about that's not going to rile them up. And that can be anything from sports teams to animals.
So you walk in and you're checking out the place. You're observing that they're a Cowboys fan, and you pull that out when you need it.
Yes.
Fascinating. Yeah. Gosh, that's fascinating. Okay. How do you leave work at work?
Well, for me, I have a long drive home, and I'll turn off my police radio while once I leave city limits. And so I will basically just turn on the radio, listen to some radio, or turn off and just have silence. And the commute lets me decompress. And then once I get home, I'm most of my career I've worked evening shifts. So once I get home, I go to bed. I go to bed and I wake up the next morning. It's a new day, right? And so seldom do I struggle with bringing work home with me, especially just an officer, because once I'm off duty, I'm off duty, and I can enjoy my time at home with my family, and my home life isn't all law enforcement related. My home life, it has lots of other things going on, so it's not hyper focused on law enforcement stuff. So that really helps with turning it off. If you're not just always talking cop talk all the time, then you're able to kind of get away from it in that regard. As a supervisor, though, I do. I feel I'm more tied to my phone. For the purpose of I want to be there for my officers and I want to be there for my sergeants. So I want them to be able to have access to me. And as a sergeant, you work the same shift your officers do. So when you're off, they're off. As a lieutenant, though, every graveyard shift I'm responsible for the Southwest. So even though it's my day off, that shift that night they're working, and I want to know, did one of my officers get injured? Or, was there some big call that, that was potentially dangerous to my officers or the public, whether it be a pursuit? Like if there's something big, I want to know about it. I want to know how it's affecting my officers, because I want to make sure that mentally they're good to go to serve the public. They're in a good place. And so it's just, and also, depending on their personal lives, if they have a loss of a loved one or something, I need to keep tabs on that. So as a supervisor, I'm much more it's still there in the back of my mind, even on my weekends. But fortunately, like I said, I have great sergeants, so I just have to wait for them to reach out to me. That
is perfect. And you can trust them.
Yes.
Chandler, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for serving this incredible state and Albuquerque in particular. Thank you so much, guys, for supporting Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And thank you even more for supporting our police officers, all of our first responders. That what they do is amazing. They keep our culture going in ways that we can't imagine what goes on behind the scenes. So be nice to our policemen and our policewomen, please. Thank you. Bye.